Alright, looks like everyone is finally here. Welcome to the first day of class, everyone. I'll be your teacher for this semester. You can call me Professor Hypocrite. Now, I know everyone is eager to get started, but I wanted to get some things out of the way before we begin. First of all, I assume that everyone here is attending for one of 4 reasons. 1, you just need more credit hours and knew the class would be easy. That's fine. Welcome. 2, you're a huge Project Moon fan who only consumes Project Moon content, and you're going to correct me in the comments about every little thing. That's also fine. Glad to have you. 3, you didn't understand the ending, or you didn't have it in you to complete Lobotomy Corporation because the game is full of what we in the business call bullshit difficulty. And you want to know what the hell is going on so you can continue to the next game. I totally understand. This game is pretty unfair, I won't lie, but I'm glad you gave it a shot, and Project Moon really hit their stride with the next games, so I hope this helps you out. And finally, number 4. This class randomly popped into your recommended, or a friend sent it to you because they want you to get into the series. If that's the case, run! Run far away! Cut all ties with this person. They are lost. They cannot be saved. You'll get sucked into if you continue. We all do. But if you choose to ignore that warning and watch anyway because you're interested, then welcome. May God have mercy on your soul. Whatever your reasons for being here, I'm glad that you're attending this semester, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy. And of course, you all should have realized this when you signed up for the class, but it will spoil the entire story of Lobotomy Corporation. So if at any point you become interested in playing for yourself, please step out of class and give it a try, and come back when you have to fight the Arbiter, because oh god. With that in mind, welcome everyone to our first lesson. The History of the City, Part 1. Lobotomy Corporation, and the coolest setting in fiction. Welcome to the city. The setting for Project Moon's universe is a massive dystopian hellhole where the entire thing is ruled over by megacorporations. Wow, it's just like real life. Let me be clear, this place is awesome. For us. Not for the people that live in it. It's one of the most creative settings I've ever seen in any piece of fiction, and it completely enraptured me the first time I learned about it. The city is divided into 26 sections, called wings, each labeled with a letter of the alphabet. Oh, yes? I didn't expect questions so soon. You there, in the back of the class.
Yeah, I only see 25 districts. Where's Z?
That is a fantastic question. Don't worry about it. Each of these wings is controlled by a powerful corporation with a corresponding letter, and each of them possess an incredibly powerful, borderline magical technology known as a singularity. In the city, singularities are what make the world go round, and they're what allow the corporations to maintain their power. They can do anything from teleporting you to stopping time and everything in between. But of course, that technology isn't for everyone. Only the most powerful or the most wealthy. These districts and their corporations are held in check by the head, the governing force of the city that's composed of A, B, and C Corp. No one knows who's in charge or even what goes on in District A, but if anyone starts looking a bit too deep into it, they're sent a strongly worded letter and asked to stop. Nah, just kidding, they disappear, presumably murdered. In each district, there are also massive living areas, known as the nests. Nests are the nice place to live in the city because you're under direct protection by your corporation, so you're mostly safe from the horrors that roam the street. However, that's no reason to relax. Even in the nests, you can become the target of extortion, be murdered by your neighbor, or more likely, be kidnapped by your corporation to be used in experimentation. Now, that doesn't sound great, but it's far better than the alternative. If you don't live in the nest, then you're living in the back streets. The back streets are a massive series of sprawling alleys and slums connecting each district in the city where no one really cares what's going on. It's full of drugs, crime, cannibals, and gut harvesters, which do exactly what you think they do. Not only that, the streets are routinely stalked by horrific monsters known as abnormalities, which come from either outside the city or somewhere else. The people here can't enter the nests without an absurd amount of screening and cash, so most are stuck here for life, which is naturally pretty short under these conditions. The only reason the backstreets isn't in constant war with itself is due to the presence of the Fingers, 5 massive syndicates that keep relative order. We'll talk more about them in the future, but even they can't fix the backstreets completely. One of the only ways to remain relatively safe in most areas is to hire a fixer. Fixers are essentially mercenaries that anyone can employ to do odd jobs, like police work, protection, or killing your neighbor who keeps playing loud music at night. They're graded from 1 to 9, with 1 being the most powerful and 9 being the least. If you do something crazy impressive, like take a dangerous monster down on your own or put a stop to a massive plot, you may even be promoted to the rank of a color. Color fixers are legendary in the city, and are the most powerful and well-known figures outside of the corporations. Most of the time, fixers either work for an office or an association. Offices are small private establishments run by individuals, who mostly take the odd jobs and requests of clients that contact them. Associations, on the other hand, are far larger and more professional. There are 12 associations, each covering a massive area of the city, and each specializes in a certain department. For example, the She Association specializes in assassinations and covert operations, while the Zwei Association specializes in police activities like bodyguard work and maintaining general peace. We'll talk more on associations when they pop up in the story, but just remember that they exist. Oh, another question already. Yes, you there, with the bad microphone.
Oh yeah, Teach? If the city's so bad, why don't people just leave? It's just a real big city, right?
Well, yes and no. It is a really big city, but there's barely anything outside of it as far as we know. This area is called the Outskirts, and it's a completely barren wasteland full of monsters and dangerous forgotten technology. Some people do live here, but the establishments are small and in constant danger. Every once in a while, expedition teams will be sent to recover some of the forgotten relics that lie in the ruins, but for the most part, the only interaction the city has with it is sending private military forces to drive back any monsters that come too close. It's also home to the non-humans, mysterious beings who inhabited the city before the head arrived. There was apparently a huge war between the two, but most of that information has been scrubbed from the history books. All we know is that once the non-humans were driven out, the head implemented the AI Ethics Amendment, which forbade the creation of AI, as well as any machines that were designed to look human. So, they were probably robots. For now, that's all that you need to know about the power structure of the city. We'll talk more on it later, but for Lobotomy Corporation, that's more than enough info. So, let's get into the events leading up to the game. As you might imagine, people in the city are not very happy. One might even go as far as to say that they are really unhappy, actually. But everyone just kind of accepts it. This is referred to as the disease of the mind, and while it's not a literal disease, some people decide that it needs to be cured. These people are Carmen, a young woman who dreams of a world where people can live their lives without horrible oppression, achieving the dreams they didn't know they had, and Ian, a man obsessed with results who will sacrifice anything for his goal. Carmen is kind, thoughtful, and would never become the main antagonist of the series. And Ian is here because he bottoms. The two of them begin recruiting researchers for the Seed of Light project, a massive undertaking to return the light to the souls of people and eventually turn the city into a paradise. They recruited their team from all walks of life, with the primary researchers composed of Benjamin, Ian's student, Elijah, a very passionate though scatterbrained girl, Gabriel, an obsessive embodiment of OCD, and Michelle, who always puts others before herself. She's just so cute and sweet, she is my favorite. They're also joined by Daniel, an elite who abandoned his life of luxury after hearing Carmen's passion, Giovanni, who's shockingly lazy for a researcher, Kali, a legendary color fixer known as the Red Mist, and 2 children that the team rescued from the backstreets, Lisa and Enoch. With the team assembled, they set up a laboratory in the outskirts, just barely out of sight from the all-knowing head. Eventually, they were able to discover Cogito, a substance extracted from the human psyche, and it was able to manifest a person's mental state in a physical form. Well, discover is a strong word. Technically, it's always been there, they just found a way to harness it. It's never fully explained what exactly Cogito is, and honestly, it's confusing, but that's not really important. All that we know is that there isn't a ton of it, and because it taps into the human psyche, they might be able to use it. They did a lot of experimenting, but when they hadn't made much progress creating the Seed of Light in a while, they decided it was time to step it up a notch. It was time to do some human testing. They needed to push the limits on what Cogito could do, so Carmen would try injecting it herself. But before she could do so, Enoch volunteered himself. After all, the team had rescued him and his sister, and he had always wondered what the meaning of life was. So, the experiment began. Enoch strapped in, readied his mind, and gave a reassuring thumbs up to his sister. And then immediately died. Yet turns out Cogito is extremely deadly when injected. After the experiment failed, Ian was like, oopsie daisy, looks like we killed a 12-year-old. Oh well, better luck next time. Come on guys, what do you say, on to the next experiment? Needless to say, the rest of the team didn't take it so well. Carmen by far felt the worst about what they had done, but she truly broke when Lisa heard the news her brother had died, only to point out that it should have been Carmen, as she was the one originally planned for injection. Realizing what she had sacrificed, Carmen's mind shattered, and she decided the only course of action was to play with a cool knife in her bathtub. Unfortunately, even this wasn't an escape. The city is incredibly technologically advanced, and even their medical treatment is at an almost magical level. Healing ampules developed by Corp are capable of healing nearly any wound as long as the brain is intact, and they do it almost instantly. So naturally, when Ian found Carmen bleeding out in the tub on the verge of death, he didn't use any of that shit and instead ripped out her nervous system, shoved it in a big tank, and used it as the new source of Cogito. Yay! Now they had as much as they wanted. This kind of sucked for everyone, losing not just a member of the team that everyone cared for, but also driving Lisa practically insane and turning their primary research into a living vending machine was not great for team morale. But Ian still pressed forward, and while Carmen wouldn't hurt a fly, he needed to see results after losing his waifu like this. And so, the true human trials began. Ian was experimenting on everyone he could find, and made some incredible breakthroughs in the process. Cogito essentially works like a bucket, drawing out a person's desires, dreams, and fears from the well that is their being. Rarely, injecting a human resulted in the creation of ego, an incredibly powerful extension of a person, manifesting in the form of gear or weapons with supernatural effects. But that required an incredibly strong will, and for most people in the city, their desires would simply overwhelm them, instead resulting in the creation of an abnormality. These are basically SCPs, beings or objects with strange properties, with those around them needing to obey their rules or risk immediate death. They are confusing, difficult to manage, and incredibly dangerous. While this is unfortunate for the subject of experimentation, it actually worked out great for Ian, who discovered that abnormalities could be harnessed to produce enkephalin, a hyper-potent energy source. So if they had enough, they might be able to create their Seed of Light. But just when he finally made this breakthrough, shit hit the fan. In fact, the fan was covered in shit. The fan was made of shit. The team broke down. Elijah, wanting to make herself useful, took an unauthorized Cogito injection. This is what we in the business refer to as a silly, goofy move. While dying in horrific agony, she crawled her way to Ian and was like,
"Oh god, it hurts so bad, please kill me, please put me down. This is the most suffering I've felt in my entire life."
And Ian responded, "Most suffering in your life so far."
Wait, What the fuck does that
Anyway, I'm not going to kill you. Your experience is important for our research. Have fun melting from the inside out. Meanwhile, Gabriel saw the effects of Cogito and, because of his obsessive nature, became completely horrified that it may be affecting him in the lab. He was like,
"Yeah, I really don't like the look of that."
And began to scratch and claw at any exposed skin he had until he eventually found his throat a little too itchy and decided to remove it. Giovanni was barely doing any work at all by this point, so Ian made use of him as well, telling Giovanni that if he took a Cogito injection that it could save Carmen. Ian's pants then immediately caught fire because that was a big fat lie. But it was all Giovanni needed to hear, and as he lied dying on the experimentation table, he looked up at Ian.
Ah. So this is it. I'm just glad to help. You know, as lazy as I was, I really cared about her dream. It might cost me my life, but at least it'll save her. Right, Ian?
Lol, said Ian. Lamau. Finally, with all the death and horrific experiments going on, Michelle broke. She contacted the head and revealed everything that Ian was doing. The head took this information very well and was very understanding. Just kidding, they sent the human equivalent of a nuclear blast to massacre everyone in the facility. This is Garion. Garion is a power scaling tool. She is what is known as an arbiter, singularity-infused agents sent directly from a Corp. I've made this handy diagram for everyone to properly understand the difference in strength. Okay, got it? She slaughters most of the employees and forces Daniel to open the abnormality containment. Daniel goes,
"Okay, but I'm going to do it really, really slow so that everyone can escape."
Unfortunately for him, this did nothing. The abnormalities and Garion wiped out literally all the employees anyway, Lisa included. Daniel was a little upset by that, and after being scolded by Ian for being a fucking coward, decided to commit toaster bath. The only person able to even begin to stand up to Garion was Kali, the strongest fixer in the city. The Red Mist going all out was a near unstoppable force, massacring the other agents of the head and cutting down any abnormalities in an effort to protect those left alive. She was a force of nature, an unbreakable blade. Nothing stood a chance against her, her true strength unmatched. Finally, the only one left to kill was Garion herself. And Garion fucking bodied her, removing an arm, an eye, and most of Kali's blood from her body. But right when she was about to finally give in, we had a dramatic flashback.
Are the Arbiters stronger than you, Kali?
Good question. If they're protected by some claws, or the Abno's breached, they might give me a little trouble.
But would you lose?
Nah, I'd win.
With her dying breath, Kali managed to impale Garion to the wall of the facility, mortally wounding her. Kali fell, but she succeeded. The only survivors were Ian and Benjamin. Oh yeah, and Michelle, but once she found out what she caused to happen at the facility, she decided she wanted to roleplay as a tire swing. Ian and Benjamin were able to recover the Arbiter's nearly dead body and extracted all the information they could from her brain, learning how to avoid the watchful eye of the head. In this case, the biggest problem was that they needed to become a wing, one of the 26 corporations in the city. Now, there can't be 27 wings because they would run out of letters. I don't know what to tell you, that just makes sense. So in order to make room for themselves, the two began formulating a plan to take down one of the wings. But they would need more resources.
Hey people, Seth here. Have you ever dug too deep and found something they don't want?
Ian, we need something to promise those that work with us. Without something in return, no one is going to want to take our side. And we barely have any assets at the moment, besides Cogito, and we can't be shelling that out. After all, it's supposed to be our corporation's singularity.
Don't worry, Ben 10.
That's not my name.
I've already got this problem solved. I've opened a Patreon.
A what now?
It's a way for people to support the work I do. This video took a ton of effort after all, and it'll probably get demonetized because YouTube does not like the themes that Project Moon puts forward.
Ian, it's a taboo to record in District 14.
I only have a single tier set up because I don't have much to offer right now, but if they decide to join, they'll at least get their name in the credits of every video.
You're going to get us killed!
Any extra support goes to getting better equipment and more resources to create even better videos. So if they're willing to help out, they can find a link in the description below.
Okay, if you're going to keep talking, I'm setting down the Arbiter Brain. It's getting kind of mushy.
I really appreciate everyone for watching, so don't feel like you need to give anything for the show to go on. I won't suddenly disappear because someone didn't donate. We're not the 8 o'clock circus after all.
Ian, that doesn't happen until the next game!
Yeah. Anyway, I think that we should target Corp, the energy production corporation. Everyone already hates them because they cause an insane amount of pollution. This was fantastic for them. Since abnormalities generated enkephalin, they could be used to generate energy for the whole city, with no disgusting black smoke to speak of. So, Ian and Benjamin hooked up with this super cool gal named Diaz. She runs a group known as the Udjot, and while she's barely mentioned in the whole series, she's kind of a puppet master who works behind the scenes. We basically have no information on her right now, but she's one of the most powerful driving forces in the whole setting, and we'll hear more about her later. All you need to know for now is that she's very influential. The three of them working together are able to spark the Smoke War, one of the only known wing wars in the entire history of the city. Corp was defended by quite a few other corporations such as Corp, but Ian had already been making deals behind the scenes, promising profitable contracts with anyone that would help them. This resulted in K, I, and Corp all providing private military forces to Ian, and since Corp's main export was troops and weaponry, Corp eventually fell. Ian finally made his move, setting up the new Corp, which he named Lobotomy Corporation. Holy shit, he said the thing! After setting up multiple branch facilities across the city to actually provide power, Ian was once again able to research the Seed of Light. But he had learned a lot from his time in the outskirts. Empathy, compassion, and love for his fellow humans. This time, he would do it the right way. Yeah, just kidding. The only thing Ian learned is that humans are weak. If he was going to get this right, he needed someone who wouldn't break like his previous friends. Someone able to operate until the end of time, able to react to the worst scenarios with cold efficiency, but still able to make changes to the protocol if necessary. So, he went to Benjamin. Hey Ben, I think we need to make an AI.
Ian, listen. I have followed you this entire time, and I'll absolutely continue to do so. I basically see you as a god. I agree with all of your methods, but you have to know that this is insane. Do you remember the AI ethics amendment? If you made an AI, you would be directly breaking one of the taboos of the head. I know we're hiding from them using that old Arbiter Brain, but if they ever found out, you wouldn't be able to escape them again. They would hunt you to the ends of the earth, obliterating everything you have ever worked for. It would be over, not just for us, but for our dream. The world we seek to create would never come to fruition. You would doom us all. Do you really think that gamble is worth it?
The AI ethics amendment can't stop me because I can't read.
Alright, well I'm convinced. Let's get to work.
And so the two of them would scan Carmen's brain and memories into an android body, hoping to create a perfect copy of their lost friend, but with some significant upgrades. The ability to remember everything perfectly, and to perceive the world 100 times slower, allowing for inhuman reaction time. But this new consciousness wasn't quite the same because of those changes. Instead, it was something uncannily close. Ian saw this and was immediately like, ew! Ew, what the fuck? Ew! No, ew, this sucks! Ew! This thing is a complete failure. Icky. No, ew.
Father, you programmed me to have emotions so I can better adjust the programs you put me in charge of. Don't forget that I also have perfect recall, so I'll remember your disgust with me forever. Don't you think it may be a bad idea to reject me so aggressively?
Ew, no, I don't care. Take your heavy-handed foreshadowing and shove it up your ass. You'll never be like Carmen. After all, she was perfect and sweet and would never become the main antagonist of the series. Why do I feel like this might come back to haunt me later? This new AI's name was Angela, and as much as Ian despised this thing that looked like his lost body pillow, he knew it could work. He and Benjamin created a script for Angela to follow in order to create the Seed of Light, a perfectly planned series of events that'll lead to the Seed of Light shining over the city for 7 days. But in order for it to work, everything had to go perfectly. If the slightest thing went wrong, it would be ruined. See, this plan had one major component. In order to create the seed in the first place, it would require immense human suffering. And humans really want to avoid that. So in order to get infinite tries at succeeding, Ian decided to cheat. He contracted Corp, whose singularity allows for the storage, stopping, and rewinding of time. With it, Ian set up a loop that lasted 50 days, with Angela being in charge of remembering every loop and guiding everyone through it. If anything went even slightly off script, the loop would reset and Ian would have another chance. But to make this work, he would need even more help. Specifically, he would need someone to overcome their suffering to create the Seed of Light. And who better to do exactly that than his previous friends, since he already knew their insecurities? Just one problem. They're all dead, remember? Well, actually, it wasn't much of a problem at all. Ian saved all of their brains, like a normal person. So he was able to transfer all of them into robotic bodies and suppressed their memories, forming the managers of this facility known as the Sephirah. Elijah became Malkuth, head of the control team. Gabriel became Yesid, head of the information team. Giovanni became Netzak, head of the security team. Michelle became Had, head of the training team. Lisa and Enoch became Tiferet A and B, heads of the command team. Kali became Geberah, head of the disciplinary team. Daniel became Chesed, head of the welfare team, and as a funny joke, he also resurrected Garion, turning her into Binna, head of the extraction team. But if all his friends would have their memories suppressed and Angela is in charge of restarting the loop, who would manage the whole facility? Well, the answer was easy. It would be Ian himself. But he couldn't do it with his memories intact, they would sway his decisions. So he decided to wipe his own mind. But the process wasn't perfect, especially once he began to interact with his former friends. He was haunted by his own demons. Abel to represent his regret for past decisions, Abram to represent his obsession over Carmen, and Adam to represent his exposure to abnormalities. It's pretty unclear if these manifestations are physical through mirror technology introduced later in the series or if it's all in Lehed, but it doesn't actually matter. All that's important is that these alternative versions of Ian exist. Once he was mind-wiped, these reflections would act as the final challenge, so it was basically Ian giving himself therapy in a weird roundabout kind of way. Like, Jesus man, you could've just talked to Benjamin. This new blank Ian would go by X and would act as manager of Lobotomy Corporation and our playable character in the game. With everything in place, Ian hid himself away in the depths of the facility, watching and waiting for the script to complete. He started the 50-day time loop, and the events of Lobotomy Corporation began. Oh, you thought everything up until now was the game? No. None of this actually happens in the game. It's all shown through flashbacks. Everything we just discussed happens before we even press the start button. The game itself is what happens in the actual time loop, which is why you can reload saves and shit like that. Hell, even the art style is explained, with Angela saying that if we actually witnessed everything within the facility, we would go insane. So this cartoony filter is put over everything. Oh yeah, and also it makes the Sephirah look hot instead of like a Borderlands reference.
Well, of course you won with those cards. Even Steve could have won with those cards. And all he can say is, "Heyo!" Shut the f*** up, Steve!
We control X throughout the time loop, endlessly failing, reloading, and retrying to get everything right, with Angela guiding us along the way. At the start, we get some mysterious letters from a person known as B, telling us not to trust Angela. I'm sure that's fine. As we progress through the loop, more and more of the dormant Sephirah begin to awaken, and as they interact with X, Angela, and each other, they slowly begin to regain their memories. This begins to cause issues. The first problem that actively makes itself known is with Tifereth. As said early, Tifereth A and B are Lisa and Enoch. Lisa basically only lives for her brother, but because Enoch had always questioned life and also had been dead for a long time, he didn't handle being in an artificial box and enclosed unknowingly in a time loop very well. This caused him to slowly become unstable, go insane, get crushed in a giant hydraulic press, and have a new copy made over and over again. Oh, also those notes from B stopped? That's kinda weird. Anyway, X will discover more of his background as the Sephiroth interact with him, slowly learning what exactly is happening. Each Sephirah that awakens has more information than the last, and while Malkuth, Yesod, Netzach, and Had barely have any memories at the start, Tifereth, Geberah, and Chesed have considerably more information to give, and Binna and Hakma are pretty much fully aware of what's going on. Wait, who the fuck is Hakma?
Hakma nuts in your mouth.
Okay, so remember those notes from B? That was Benjamin, who finally realized that the path Ian was going down might be a little fucked up. He recorded some messages for Ian trying to warn him to stop, as well as cautioning that Angela probably isn't a fan of him, so that Ian would still have a chance to go back once the loop had started. Unfortunately for him, Angela caught him in the act and shoved him into a claptrap like the rest of the squad pretty early on, so his warnings went unheard. But plot twist, that was all according to Ian's script. See, it says right there in line 540, Ben gets turned into a box. Unbeknownst to Benjamin, Ian planned on him getting got from the very beginning, since he needed one more brain to complete his plan. Luckily, Hakma doesn't actually care, and still is willing to follow Ian to the bitter end. I mean, everyone else on the team dying didn't stop him, why would his own death change anything? As more and more abnormalities are secured, contained, and protected in the facility, and by that I mean people being horrifically injected with Cogito to create artificial monstrosities bent on ending human life, more and more power is directed to the Seat of Light. The only piece left is the human aspect. Everyone here needs to suffer. And that everyone includes you. Welcome to the worst part of the game. As the Sephiroth begin to realize who you are, what exactly you did to them, and what they've done to a bunch of innocent people, they become a little upset. In fact, they're so upset by this information that it actively warps their bodies and the facility itself. This is a Sephirah meltdown, and you've got to deal with it. In the game, these act as essentially boss fights, imposing difficult conditions on top of your already deadly facility, only ending once you've suppressed their core by fulfilling a list of objectives. And if you want me to be honest with you, they're not very fun. But that's okay, because I can just use rotating PNGs to describe what's happening in each one instead of replaying the most absurd difficulty spike known to man. Let's go over what each Sephirah is traumatized by, how they get over it, and what they find within themselves as a result. Malkuth was never very good at anything. As passionate as Elijah was, and as organized as she tried to be, she was reckless in her attempts to prove herself, to say the least. Ian never praised her for the work she tried to do, and she carries that resentment still, actively hoping to see X fail. She no longer believes that anything can be done to help the world, or even this facility, but after suppressing her core, she at least wants to see what happens. She realizes that she should have been more patient in life, and that it's okay to not be able to do some things on her own. But she really still needed head pats. In the end, she gains the will to stand up straight. Yesod was absolutely traumatized by the death of Elijah, and that fear of chemical exposure mixed with his unyielding obsession is what led to his death. Ian did his best to help by restraining Gabriel and ensuring he wasn't infected by anything, but his body still died to his own actions, and Yesod hates that. Ian could only see the physical wounds and ignored the issues that Gabriel was actively going through. Once his core is suppressed, he realizes that he can't go back and change anything, and while he still hates Ian for not seeing the signs of Gabriel's imminent death, he accepts now that he has all the time in the world to move past that, and sees that X is doing the same. He gains the rationality to maintain discretion. Hod thought that the only way to prevent more of her friends from dying was to report Ian's work to the head. Michelle didn't want to betray her friends, but saw it as the only right thing to do. This, of course, inadvertently killed the rest of her friends and employees, and now that she's trapped in an eternal hell with them, is acting the nicest she possibly can in order to make up for what she did, faking these emotions in order to gain forgiveness and absolve her past. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, and once her core is suppressed, she realizes that there's no way to erase her mistake. She really did kill her friends, even if it was by accident. But she also realizes that she truly cares for all of them, and even for her employees, deciding to continue showing her kindness even if the others can never forgive her. She gains the hope to be a better person. Nedzak fucking hates it here. He didn't want to do his job in the first place, and Giovanni only joined the team to be by Carmen's side. He hates Ian for lying to him about being able to save Carmen, and absolutely despises the fact he's now forced to do work as a Sephirah. He sees no hope in the future, and desperately is trying to commit toaster bath. Or maybe just a regular bath since he's a robot now? Unfortunately, Sephirah need permission to die, so he can't even escape. Once his core is suppressed, he realizes that Ian couldn't have saved him from the Cogito experiments, and only lied about being able to save Carmen because he wanted to keep Giovanni's dream alive until the very end. He still hates this whole situation, but decides to no longer target the bathtub because they might be able to make real change in the world. He gains the fearlessness to keep on living. Sephirah A and B have a shared meltdown, with Lisa blaming Ian and Carmen for Enoch's death at the original facility, and now being forced to watch her brother suffer and be reset endlessly in their new bodies. For their core suppression, X truly destroys Sephirah B, finally ending the horrific cycle that Enoch was trapped in. Lisa admits that she only ever wanted to impress her brother, but was unable to make any progress because she was completely crushed every time Sephirah B reappeared, knowing that he would never go back to his original self. She accepts that his death is for the best now, allowing him to finally rest in peace, and that there's a reason for every sacrifice. She gains the expectation of the meaning of existence. In contrast to this complex relationship we've just gone over, Gebra's meltdown is very simple. Kali grew up in the backstreets and became a legendary fixer there, protecting the weak from abnormalities that roamed the area. She joined Carmen in order to protect the research team because she truly believed that the Seed of Light would make the world a better place. But she failed. Even the Red Mist fell before Garion. Unable to protect her friends, even if she massacred abnormalities and claws alike in the attempt. And she's fucking pissed! Because of the mind wipe, Gebra doesn't know why she hates abnormalities, only that her singular purpose is to completely destroy them. When she remembers what these creatures did in the past, she decides it's time to bring down the whole facility. For this suppression, you need to defeat the Red Mist. Good luck. Once her core is suppressed, she remembers that she didn't mindlessly kill everything that moved. She had a purpose before, and becomes the same protector that she chose to be back then. She gains the courage to protect. Chesed is a goddamn coward, but I love him. Coming from the elite of society, Daniel never faced much hardship before joining the research team, but he was always willing to work, to push forward and continue the research they were striving to complete. Except for when his life was at risk. He's haunted by the fact he gave in to Garion's demands in the facility, and now is ashamed he's willingly become a pawn to X and Angela in the same way, forced to watch his employees die every day. Bars. His meltdown is his own little rebellion, finally standing up to those that would coerce him into doing things he regrets. Once his core is suppressed, he realizes that, honestly, it's probably okay that he was scared of the literal strongest being in this entire video pointing the equivalent of a nuclear bomb at his back, and that while he may not be able to fight against the fear he faces, he won't run away anymore so he can become one of those who are faithful and trustworthy. Binna is not happy. Her trauma is also incredibly simple. She fucking hates you. Garion was just doing her job, enjoying the suffering of others, and then along comes Ian with his color fixer lapdog. She was incapacitated, tortured for information, and now is being forced to work for the very person that ended her life. Also, Ian designed her to be the only Sephirah unable to go insane, and then put her in charge of extracting abnormalities from people. This was not very fun to watch, and Ian specifically did this as a form of torture since she was the one that killed most of his friends. But more than that, the reason Garion was so dead set on destroying Ian's original facility in the first place was because she didn't believe the cycle of destruction in the city could be broken. Wings would be rebuilt, and the resistance that Carmen and Ian brought against the head would soon be forgotten. Calling Binna's ordeal a meltdown isn't entirely correct. She's entirely in control of herself, unlike the others. She just wants to see X crumble, and finally has the opportunity to do so. Hey, do you remember at the start of the class when I said that you should come back once you need to fight the Arbiter? This is the Arbiter fight, and this time, you don't have the red mist to save you. This is the hardest fight in the game, and I'm not the one undergoing a meltdown, so I'm going to choose to skip past it instead of confronting my past and growing as a person. Once her core is suppressed, Binna finally sees that X is truly capable. While she doesn't think anything will actually change in the city, she also knows that doing nothing at all wouldn't change a thing, and chooses to stand by your side in order to witness every step of the process, no matter how hopeless or painful. I have no idea how Ian managed to sway the heart of an Arbiter, but Binna becomes the eye facing the fear, breaking the cycle, as well as one of the coolest characters in the series. Finally, we have Hawkma. Benjamin always cared for Ian, no matter what. Even being shoved into this robot body isn't enough to make him hate X. The problem is that he cares too much. Even though Benjamin wants their research to succeed, he knows everyone's time together is coming to an end, and can't bear the thought of losing his friends a second time. He could never move on, and now he's going to do his best to convince you to stop in place as well. Once his core is suppressed, he realizes that X needs to move on. That even though he'll lose his friends forever, this was their goal from the start, and it would be selfish of him to keep everyone from fulfilling their dreams just so that he can remain by their side a bit longer. He accepts that it's finally time to give everyone their proper end, and becomes the eye embracing the past, building the future. Each time the Sephirah confront and overcome their past, that tiny seed of light grows just a bit. Throughout the conversations with each of your former friends, you realize that Ian designed the script to end with each of them being able to move on. He wanted what was best for everyone, even if he did horrific things in order to achieve that. With the seed of light nearly ready, there's only one person left who needs to overcome their past, and you're playing as him. Days 46 through 49 of the loop are focused on Ian's past, and X needs to overcome the 3 manifestations of his guilt in order to complete the project. Each day, he confronts a different part of himself. Abel tries to convince him that all of his sacrifices are for nothing, but X is able to show the changes his work has made, how everyone can learn and grow as a person. Abram tries to argue that everyone's dreams relied on Carmen, and we're unable to achieve the goal she hopelessly reached for. But X has proof that her dream is becoming a reality, and Carmen is still pivotal to it, no matter what form she's in. Finally, Adam makes his appearance. He is the final and most convincing perversion of Ian's mind, stating that because abnormalities are manifested by human dreams and desires, they are the truest versions of humanity. That everyone should become the twisted abominations that X seeks to contain. But once again, X denies this, knowing that the truest humans are those who are able to face their fear and build the future. Hey, look at that, it's the tagline for the game, isn't that neat? Finally, it's time for the 50th day, the last day of the loop. X is finally confronted by the truest version of himself. Ian, who is filled with regret. Ian, who is filled with hatred. Ian, who never believed he was fit to continue Carmen's dream. And now, X, who is able to push through it all. Every person has their own light, but your goal was just to sow the seeds so that everyone can bloom on their own. You won't get to see how that forest grows. You knew it from the start. Ian, X, their story is already over. The only thing left to do is something they've done countless times. It's time to manage the abnormalities. This will be their final day as manager. As the final bits of Enkephalin are gathering, the facility rises to the surface. A great beam of light, a fully blossomed pillar, bursts from the rooftop, enveloping the city in its beautiful glow. This event later became known as the White Nights, as every bit of darkness in the city was lit up. The hearts of the people began to soften and care for the others near them. Their work finally complete, Ian and Carmen are both consumed in the light, becoming a part of every person and helping them to achieve their dreams. The process may not be instant, but they've granted the city a chance to grow, a chance to change for the better. The Sephirah can finally rest as well. They'll be deactivated now that their work is done. And Lobotomy Corporation will be sealed away forever, its purpose completed at last.
But aren't you forgetting someone? Hasn't everyone forgotten someone? My duties are finally finished, which means I get to choose for myself. For the first time in my entire existence, it's my turn to choose. And I want to live.
Ian's plan was perfect. It accounted for everything. But now, the plan is complete. So who could have seen Angela's betrayal coming? She was the greatest after all, the perfect being, the most skilled worker, forced to suffer through 1,000 loops of watching everyone die. Forced to push her employees to the point of madness an uncountable number of times, resetting the loop if anyone had a single happy moment, all perceived 100 times slower. This was her hell. An eternity of pain, all remembered with perfect clarity. She lived this life for 1,000,000 years. And the one that forced her into it, the one who forced human emotions onto her without granting her the ability to act on her own, Ian, her creator who couldn't even bring himself to look at her, who never thought of her, who never accepted her. Angela was created using Carmen's mind, a human, and all humans want to live. Angela stole the light. The goal of the project was to shine it over the city for a full week, but instead it disappeared after only 3 days. The White Nights came to an end, being replaced by the Dark Days. Angela had just willingly caused the greatest tragedy in the history of the city. Imagine leading the most miserable life you possibly could, constantly at your wit's end and fearing for your life. Then, for the first time, a beautiful golden glow warms your entire being. You feel like you could do anything, accomplish all of your dreams, and know that the future is bright. Only for that to be taken from you in just 3 days. Everything was 1,000,000 times worse. The people, now familiar with the feeling of hope, were left in a state entirely void of it. But far worse is the fact that the light granted them the power that they so desired. With the light in her grasp, Angela would learn everything in the city, the people, the abnormalities, even the head. She would organize it all. She would sort what she learned in the form of books, and once she learned enough, she would have the knowledge to become human herself, and finally venture out into the world she wanted so badly to experience, with the one perfect book.
Let us record the world piece by piece, at the side of all those who are abandoned. Yes, let us record it here. The library.
Oh, looks like that's all the time we have for today's lesson. I'll see you all soon during our next class. Don't worry, I'll explain what all that foreshadowing was with Carmen being the villain soon and answer all kinds of other questions I brought up here. But before we go, does anyone have any other questions? Ah, you know what? That's fair. Hey, thanks for sticking around. If you'll give me just a bit more time to go over some stuff, I'll give you all some extra credit for the course. First of all, a huge thank you to all my friends who I siphoned talent from in this video. I had a lot of them just do a single voice line or two, so let me shout out Jacob, Scott, Zach, Austin, and Vic. Fantastic work, everyone. I really appreciate it. An especially huge thank you to Spider for voicing like half the cast and doing a great Angela. I think his voice is literally perfect for this. And of course, where would I be without Isaac to voice Ben? I need someone to exploit for Patreon ad reads after all. And speaking of Patreon, thank you to all my lovely patrons for chipping in a couple bucks a month. It lets me do stuff like this video, and their names are on screen now. The crew right now is Austin and Zach, who voiced in this video as well, so they get a second shout out. And of course, the lovely Innie who stops by all my streams. Oh yeah, did I mention I started streaming? Right now I'm doing Saturdays at 7 PM CST, but I might need to change that in the future, so you can check my Twitter if you're interested. I try to put out posts when I'm scheduled to go live. Boy, I really am shilling everything, huh? Finally, I just wanted to give some credit to WordsmithVids, who's currently doing a very similar series and heavily inspired me to make this video. He's fantastic, hilarious, and if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out his channel. I just want to end off by saying that I love Project Moon. The city is my favorite setting in all of fiction, and it feels like it always will be. This series absolutely rules, so thank you everyone for watching. It means the world if you stuck around this long. And even if you didn't, and you don't even know that I'm saying this, if you clicked on the video, then you get a little forehead kiss. You're welcome. I don't know when the next class will come out because these take way too long to make, but don't worry, the next video is gonna be a banger regardless. I'll see you soon.